Hey friends, you're listening to the None But Curious podcast, a space for nuns, agnostics, and nothing in particulars. We are okay with not knowing, and we're inspired by each other, art, nature, and everyday moments. I'm really happy you're here. Let's go explore. I'm having issues with the fact that the dog that I had with my first husband passed away today, and although he went through a more harrowing experience, I'm still feeling grief. She was my familiar, and I don't usually align with witchy stuff, but there's no other way to describe Willow. I mean, the way that we acquired her into our family, would acquired even be the right word? It was strange. So basically what happened was, years ago, my kids were begging for a dog, and my husband at the time wanted a dog. And guess who didn't want a dog? Me. And yet, they kept looking online, looking at all these puppies, and all I could think of was all the poop and the midnight whining. And my kids were old enough at the time that I could actually sleep through the night, so that was kind of nice, and I didn't want to give that up. Anyway, saw an ad for these really adorable puppies, went to the SPCA, and there were 2 or 3 puppies left. And both my husband and I were totally taken aback by the mother of these puppies. Her disposition was gentle and trusting. And she just walked over to us, sniffed us, looked, and then walked right back like she didn't care that we were with her puppies. She knew they were safe. And so we went home that night and we talked about the puppies, and I said, I really don't want a puppy because we're out of baby mode. And so we agreed that if all the puppies were gone and Willow was still there, that we would adopt her. Well, we went back the next day, and my husband at the time went back into the center, and he comes out a few minutes later and says, I'm going to sign some paperwork. We're adopting her. And he also told me that the last puppy had been adopted about 10 minutes before he walked in. And so that's how it was. That's how everything was with Willow. It was magical. And I had to let her go 4 years ago when I opted to divorce my then husband because there was no way I was going to find an apartment with a large husky shepherd. But she was my girl. And leaving her was about as hard as knowing that I would only have my older kids half time from there on out. And every time that I would go and drop the kids off to their dad's house, Willow would come to the door, wagging her tail, looking to sniff my hand, and I would greet her, just as I always did. And I had nicknames for her because we would go on walks. We'd go on these long walks. She loved walking, even though she couldn't stand the heat. And she refused to drink from a water bottle. You know, one of those portable water bottles that you can carry. She refused because she was so stubborn. Such a husky. Such a German shepherd. But she was so gentle and so kind with the kids. And when it was story time for my kids, when they would go to bed, she would go up the stairs and she'd lay right next to one of us. And she would listen to the story. And I remember there'd be times when the chapter was over, she'd put her paw out, put her paw on my arm or my leg, depending on where I was sitting, as if to ask for more reading. She never tired of that. And losing a pet is hard. And somehow I feel like I've lost her twice because she wasn't mine anymore when I left the house. But amazingly, my ex-husband texted me yesterday and asked if I wanted to come see her. And of course I did. That's my girl. And so when I walked in his house, and she was really, really frail and not moving and laying there breathing heavily, I just laid on the ground with her. I looked into her eyes and just talked to her. And the hard thing about this is the past few weeks I've been having a really hard time with dealing with the divorce that happened almost 4 years ago. I mean, I'm remarried and I have another baby. And I'm happy. I was going to say incredibly happy, but I don't get any sleep. We're a little stressed right now, so that would be a terrible lie. But the grief doesn't go away. Grief of loss doesn't go away. It changes and it morphs, but it doesn't disappear. And you read those things and you say, well, if you're still grieving, that means that you really loved that creature, that person, that job. And then it leads to me wondering if I'm grieved over somehow. And it's not just my prior marriage, it's friendships that just dissipated into thin air. It's not speaking with my parents for about the same time that I've been divorced. Whether it be because they're stubborn or just don't care, I don't know. It just causes a lot of grief to swell up. And it's usually cyclical. It doesn't happen with the full moon, but I think it's the new moon where I feel the deepest sense of loss. Anyway, Willow represented a connection that I had a long time ago. There are stories that are shared, things that we did together. And it's just another trigger to be reminded of what has been lost. Like I said, I've gained a lot, so many amazing things. My husband now is truly my best friend, and I am so grateful for his existence. And I don't regret for a second having Benjamin. I question myself, but I don't regret it. So losing Willow in the divorce, and then her actually being gone, just kind of cements a lot of things as far as loss goes. And she's shown up in my dreams. Even when she was alive, she would protect me in my dreams and the weird dreams I had. So I have no sense of loss of connection with her. I will always have a sense of connection. I will always feel her. I think the greater sense of loss today is just being reminded of all the loss I felt before. And honestly, the possibility that it could happen again, and it will happen again. Loss doesn't stop. That's part of life. So how do you deal with loss? Do you pray? Do you light candles? Do you drink alcohol? Play a certain album? Do you run 14 miles? How do you deal with loss? And is it working? Does it change? What happens when you sit with it? When you sit with the grief, what happens? Does something inside of you change? And is it necessarily a bad change? Hey, thanks for listening. Let's keep this conversation going. Share your stories with our None But Curious Facebook group, or you can also follow our Instagram at None But Curious, or email candy@nonebutcurious.org if you want to share your ideas and thoughts. Until next time, stay curious.